Something big is happening in Burkina Faso. And it's not just talk. Under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Toare, the country is flipping the script and doing something many thought impossible, building its own military tools without waiting on help from the outside world. Their Prime Minister, Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo, recently shared some news that's turning heads around the globe. Burkina Faso is starting its very first homegrown defense industry. That means they're getting ready to make and fix their own weapons, right there on their own soil. This isn't just a cool idea, it's already happening. And honestly, it's happening way faster than anyone expected. Captain Traore isn't one of those leaders who just says big things for applause. He's been doing the work. Step by step, he's pulling the country out of the shadow of foreign control and pushing it toward real independence. For years, African countries like Burkina Faso have been stuck in a tough spot. They've had to ask other countries for weapons, supplies, even permission just to protect themselves. And when they said no to those same powers, boom, the support was cut off. It's like being told you can defend your house, but only if someone else hands you the key. But now, things are changing when the usual suppliers said, sorry, no weapons for you. Countries like China, Russia, Turkey, and Iran stepped in. That helped for a while, but even then it still meant Burkina Faso had to depend on someone else. And that's not real freedom. Because if you can't build your own tools, someone else always has the power to stop you cold. That's why this new defense industry matters so much. It's not just about weapons, it's about control, it's about dignity. And that's exactly what some global powers don't want to lose. They've had their eyes on the Sahel region for a long time, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, because of its valuable resources and strategic location. And they've done whatever it takes to stay in charge, including keeping military bases there and pressuring leaders behind the scenes. One of their boldest moves? Back in 1996, they got African countries to sign something called the Pelindaba Treaty. On the surface, it sounded like a peaceful promise not to build nuclear weapons. But underneath, it was a clever way to make sure African nations could never stand toe-to-toe with countries that do have those weapons. More than 50 African countries signed it, possibly without realizing just how much power they were giving up. If you've never heard of the Pelindaba Treaty, now's a good time to look it up and check if your own country signed it. You might be surprised. Now people are starting to ask, should the alliance of Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger rethink that decision? Because if a nation can't protect itself fully, can it ever truly be free? Some folks wonder if Captain Traore can actually pull all this off, but maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question is this: how will all of these changes impact the everyday people of Burkina Faso? Will they feel safer? Will there be more jobs? Better lives? If you are still watching this video, it means you love it. Why not take out a second and hit that like button? Have you done that? Let us move on. Usually there's something invisible pulling the strings in many countries. A quiet kind of control that isn't always easy to spot. But in Burkina Faso, things are taking a sharp turn in a whole new direction. For a country that doesn't have a coastline and has been dealing with constant attacks and deep struggles for years, this shift is a big deal. Still, somehow, out of all the chaos and pain, a new kind of strength is starting to grow. Burkina Faso is beginning to shape a new version of itself, one that's bold, proud, and built on unity. It's a vision that lines up with Pan-African dreams, Africans standing together, standing tall, and calling their own shots. Just recently, Prime Minister Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo stood up in the capital city, Ouagadougou, and laid out a message that wasn't just fancy talk. It was a real plan, a plan to build the country's own military tools, right there at home. No more depending on someone else's leftovers. He spoke with calm but fierce energy, saying, "We're done begging. If we want to be free, we have to protect ourselves. And if we want to protect ourselves, we need to make our own weapons. That's what the people want, and that's what we'll do." Now, this isn't just another government promise that fades away. This is a huge turning point. Since 2015, Burkina Faso has been in the middle of a deadly fight with armed extremist groups. The violence has taken thousands of lives, forced millions to flee their homes, and left large areas of the country completely out of the government's hands. For a long time, they looked to France for help. French soldiers came with their gear and their goals. But the violence didn't stop. In fact, things seemed to get worse. People began to feel like outsiders were using their country as a chessboard, making moves that didn't really help them. Then came Captain Ibrahim Traore. He stepped into power in 2022 and didn't waste time. By early 2023, he told the French forces to pack up and leave. He made it clear that the future of Burkina Faso would be written by its own people, not by someone watching from a distance. And now, the country's building its own defense industry. Instead of waiting for weapons to arrive from some far-off capital, they're starting to create their own. Rifles, drones, armoured trucks, all built by locals who actually know what they're up against. But this moment isn't just about weapons. It's about flipping the script. For too long, African countries were expected to buy everything from somewhere else. They'd dig up the gold, ship out the oil, sell the land, then use that money to import what they needed. That's the old playbook. Traore is tearing it up. And here's the part that's really different: the way they're going to pay for it all. Usually a project this big would mean loans, aid packages, or begging powerful nations for funding. But Traore isn't going down that road. He's refusing help that comes with strings attached. No deals with the IMF, no handouts from Paris or Washington. Instead, he's turning to the one thing Burkina Faso already has in abundance: its own wealth, its land, its people, and most of all, its gold. Burkina Faso is one of the top gold producers on the continent, but for years, big companies from outside swooped in, took the gold, and left crumbs behind. The people saw the mines, but never the money. That, Traore says, is over. In late 2023, something major happened in Burkina Faso that flew under most people's radar, but it could change everything. The government gave the green light to build its very first gold refinery. Now, instead of sending raw gold to other countries to get processed and letting them make all the money, Burkina Faso is keeping it in-house. Finally, the gold stays home, and so does the profit. This refinery isn't just a fancy building with machines. It's part of a much bigger plan. Along with new rules for foreign mining companies, it's helping fund the country's military projects. Captain Traore made it clear: our gold is ours. We're not here to make others rich. We're building our own future. That future doesn't involve waiting for approval from anyone else. Burkina Faso has stopped asking for permission and started doing things its own way. And real independence is not just about flags and speeches, it's about being able to feed your people, defend your borders, and pay your own bills. It's not just gold that's fueling this movement. The government has also turned to the land, farming and livestock to make the country stronger from the ground up. In 2023, they launched something called the Presidential Initiative for Food Self-Sufficiency. Sounds fancy, but the idea is simple: grow enough food so they don't have to rely on anyone else. Then came the Agro-Pastoral Offensive, which is a push to grow more crops and raise more animals. The results? In just 1 year, Burkina Faso harvested around 6 million tons of cereal. That's not just a number, it's meals, income, and power. They're selling the extra food, collecting taxes from big profits, and pouring the money back into building a stronger military. But here's the thing: this isn't just about weapons or defense systems, it's about how the country runs from top to bottom. Traore and his team aren't living like kings. No flashy salaries, no over-the-top perks. Traore still takes home the same pay he earned as a captain. And while rich countries usually give aid with strings attached, like military bases or strict rules, Burkina Faso is saying no thanks. Instead, it created something called the National Solidarity Fund. It's fueled by people who choose to donate, and that money goes toward helping families forced to flee their homes and building a stronger country. This whole approach is sending a loud message. Africa doesn't have to kneel to outsiders to survive. They're putting into action what leaders like Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, and Patrice Lumumba once dreamed of: African countries standing tall by owning their economy and deciding their own future. Sure, building a military industry sounds like it's all about weapons, but for the people of Burkina Faso, it's so much more than that. It means families can move back to their homes. It means communities can stay safe. It means life can finally feel normal again. And beyond safety, there are jobs, tons of them. Engineers to design new tools, technicians to keep them running, miners to gather the raw materials, factory workers to put everything together. For many, this could be their first steady job, their first real chance at building a better life. By keeping the money inside the country, instead of watching it disappear into the pockets of foreign companies, Burkina Faso can finally invest in things it's needed for years, like roads, schools, clinics, clean water, real progress. This new refinery and the farming programs are just the beginning of a system where everyone gets a piece of the pie, not just the powerful few. As Traore put it, this fight is about more than bullets and borders. It's about protecting who they are, holding on to their culture, their dignity, and the right to live on their own terms. Meanwhile, in other parts of Africa, foreign armies still hover. drones fly over cities in Somalia and Nigeria. French troops remain in places like Chad and Côte d'Ivoire. Burkina Faso's story is shining a light on something uncomfortable. Many African leaders are still leaning on outside soldiers to feel secure. It's like they're afraid to stand on their own feet. But those troops don't really protect African people. They protect foreign interests. They make sure the old systems stay in place. Systems where Africans are told what to do, what to buy, and who to trust. Schools and universities across the country are gearing up to train a new wave of thinkers and builders. Instead of just learning old lessons, students will dive into science, engineering, and tech so they can compete with the best minds around the world. They're not just learning for grades, they're learning to lead. And as Burkina Faso starts keeping more of its money at home, there's a bigger plan in motion. That money won't just sit in banks. It'll be used to fix roads, improve hospitals, and give schools the boost they've needed for decades. For too long, the country had to borrow cash from outsiders, and that always came with strings attached. Now they want to build things their own way, on their own terms. It's already starting. The gold refinery project and the push for stronger farming systems are setting the stage. The benefits won't just go to the rich or the powerful. They're designed to lift everyone, from city workers to farmers in the countryside. Captain Toare said something powerful not long ago. He said this fight isn't just about land or power, it's about people having pride in who they are. It's about giving folks the freedom to live with dignity and shape their own future. And one major part of that future is the defence industry they're building. Not because they want to go looking for fights, but because they want to protect their homes, their families, and their independence. That military industry is like a backbone. It supports everything else. But as Burkina Faso takes bold steps forward, not everyone's doing the same. Across the continent, you can still see foreign drones buzzing in the skies and Western military bases planted in places like Chad, Côte d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Somalia. It's like Africa is being used as a giant game board where big powers move pieces around to suit their own plans. But those soldiers from faraway places, they aren't really there to help. They're not building peace. They're holding on to control. They keep Africa in a place of need, always one favour away from help, always one loan away from debt. That system is a leftover from colonial times and it's still hanging on like an old chain nobody wants to cut. Traoré saw this clearly. So he made a different choice. He told the French troops to leave, and instead of staying alone, he looked to countries like Russia and Turkey, not because they're perfect, but because they offered partnership without acting like colonial landlords. He also joined forces with Mali and Niger to form a new alliance in the Sahel. This group isn't about chasing Western approval. It's about African countries backing each other up, building strength together. Still, a lot of African leaders aren't ready to take that leap. Why? Because fear and selfishness are a tough mix. Some presidents have gotten used to the comfort of Western deals. They live in palaces paid for by loans, while their people struggle just to eat. They nod along with whatever the old powers say, and call anyone who disagrees a dangerous rebel. Traoré didn't hold back when he spoke at the Russia-Africa Summit in 2023. He told the truth out loud, saying, African leaders shouldn't act like puppets every time a foreign power pulls the strings. His words hit hard, and they should stay in the minds of every leader who still allows foreign troops to set up shop on African soil. Because these foreign forces don't bring calm, they bring chaos. Just look at Burkina Faso. The French troops didn't stop the rebels, but when they left, something else happened. The people woke up. They realized they didn't have to depend on outsiders to protect them. They could do it themselves. Other countries are paying attention. From Mali to the Central African Republic, places that once felt powerless are finding new strength after cutting ties with foreign military powers. And there's a huge lesson in that. Real security doesn't come from someone flying in to fix things. It has to be built from the inside, by the people who live there, who understand the risks, and who are willing to defend their homes with their own hands. Of course, the road ahead won't be easy. There will be challenges, some technical, some political, and definitely some financial. Burkina Faso still needs better roads, stronger buildings, and more equipment to match its big goals. And yes, the threat from extremist groups is still very real. This isn't just Burkina Faso's story. It's something bigger. It's a signal to the entire African continent that the old story, the one that says Africa can't stand on its own 2 feet, is wearing thin. In a part of the world often portrayed as broken and bruised, Burkina Faso is glowing like the last spark of fire before dawn. Their new defence industry It's not just a factory making weapons, it's a message. A message that says, yes, we can build. Yes, we can protect ourselves. And no, we don't need permission. African leaders take note. The era of pleading is over. The era of building has begun. And right now, the people of Burkina Faso are showing everyone exactly how to get it done. But while this new energy is rising, a long shadow still stretches across the continent. From the dry heat of the Sahel to the thick jungles of Central Africa, foreign armies, mostly from the West, still camp out in the name of peacekeeping and helping. Countries like France and the US, often backed by NATO, still keep soldiers, drones and bases on African land. They say it's to stop terrorism. They say they're there to bring peace. But look a little closer and the story starts to fall apart. Because beneath all the friendly language is a much older pattern, one that Africa knows too well. It's the same game, just with a different uniform. These military missions often hide a quiet truth. While soldiers march and leaders smile for cameras, Africa's natural riches keep getting scooped up and sent overseas, and in exchange, African countries are left dealing with war, debt, and leaders who stay rich while their people go without. Just look at what's been happening with France. After its old colonial days ended in the 1960s, France didn't exactly pack up and leave. Instead, it kept a tight grip on its former colonies using a clever tool, money. 14 African countries still use the CFA franc, a currency controlled by France. That means huge amounts of African wealth quietly flow back into European banks, year after year. And then there's the military presence. French troops stayed in countries like Mali, Chad, and yes, Burkina Faso, for years. They said it was to fight terrorism, but things didn't get better. In fact, in many places, things got worse. That's why Traore made a bold move. He asked them to leave. And instead of being left stranded, he looked toward building new partnerships with countries like Russia and Turkey. Sure, those alliances aren't perfect, but they don't come with lectures, debt traps, or old colonial attitudes. More importantly, he's not doing it alone. Together with Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso has formed a new regional alliance, a pact rooted in African unity, not Western approval. It's a shift that's shaking up the old system. And that system includes more than just France. The United States is deeply involved too. In 2007, it launched AFRICOM, short for Africa Command. On paper, it sounds great. They say it's meant to fight extremist groups and boost regional safety. But look at a map of their bases and something odd jumps out. The bases are everywhere resources are. From oil fields to mining zones, the US just happens to have security interests wherever the land is rich. There are over 24 known US outposts scattered across the continent, some large and obvious, others quiet and hidden. One of the most famous is Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti, a spot often used for drone operations and surveillance. But these aren't just harmless camps, they're reminders, constant, heavy reminders, that Africa is still seen as a place to guard, control, and extract from. And while leaders like Traore are trying to flip the script, others still cling tightly to the old ways. In many parts of Africa, it's not just governments calling the shots. It's also giant foreign companies and military forces working hand in hand. Take Nigeria, for example. It's got loads of oil underground, yet its people struggle to make ends meet. Or look at the Democratic Republic of the Congo, sitting on mountains of cobalt, a key mineral for smartphones and electric cars, but the local communities barely benefit at all. Meanwhile, American drones fly quietly overhead in places like Nigeria, scanning the land rich in uranium. But even with all that treasure in the soil, folks on the ground live in poverty, their skies buzzing with machines they never asked for. For years, the story has been the same. Africa's natural riches get shipped out, and in return, foreign governments promise security and partnerships. But the real deal, Africa gives up its resources, and foreign companies rake in the cash. But here's the twist. It's not just the outsiders doing the damage. This system keeps going because some African leaders have made it easy. Instead of standing up for their people, they've made backroom deals, choosing personal power over national pride. Take Blaise Compaoré. He ruled Burkina Faso for nearly 3 decades and kept close ties with France. While foreign companies mined gold and exported cotton, his people stayed poor, watching their wealth disappear across borders. And it's not just Burkina Faso. Niger has uranium, enough to light up cities across the world. Yet many Nigerians don't even have electricity. And while American troops set up bases to help, local families were still walking miles for clean water. Over time, these governments became gatekeepers, keeping the door open for outsiders while locking their own people out of the future. But that old system is being shaken up. Enter Captain Ibrahim Traore. At just 37 years old, he stepped up with a different energy. He didn't come from a golden office. He came from the front lines, serving in dangerous regions of northern Burkina Faso, and as a peacekeeper in Mali, he had seen what wasn't working and decided to do something about it. In September 2022, he led a takeover that ousted a government unable to stop the violence that was tearing the country apart. Since then, Traoré has been flipping the script. In February 2023, he told French troops to leave. It was a bold move, ending decades of foreign military presence that had brought more frustration than peace. And by early 2025, standing before a massive crowd, he didn't hold back. "We must decolonize our minds," he said. That message hit hard, and it spread fast. All across Africa, people were watching. Suddenly, French forces started getting pushed out, not just from Burkina Faso, but from Mali, Niger, and even Côte d'Ivoire. A new voice was rising, and it wasn't begging for favours, it was demanding respect. But Traoré didn't stop at speeches. He started building. Instead of turning to the West again, he looked elsewhere, to Russia, Iran and Venezuela, countries with their own complicated histories, yes, but ones willing to work without acting like bosses. Russian troops stepped in where the French had left off, and new trade deals began to shift the balance. This time, Burkina Faso's gold, cotton, and other resources weren't just disappearing, they were being used to benefit its people. And the biggest change? Regular people were being invited to join the mission. Traoré launched a volunteer defence programme called the VDP, Volontaires pour la Défense de la Patrie. Thousands of everyday citizens signed up, trained and armed to help protect their own communities. No more waiting for foreign boots on the ground. This was Burkinabe, fighting for Burkinabe. In January 2025, all eyes were on Ghana during President John Mahama's swearing-in ceremony. When Traoré showed up, dressed in fatigues with a pistol at his side, the crowd erupted. They weren't just clapping for a man, they were cheering for a movement. Many saw him as the modern echo of Thomas Sankara, the fearless Burkinabe leader who had once stood tall against foreign exploitation before being silenced in 1987. Traoré now picks up where Sankara left off, but don't think the old powers are sitting quietly in the background. France isn't taking this shift quietly. Feeling its grip slipping, it started throwing a bit of a tantrum. Not long ago, President Emmanuel Macron complained that African leaders aren't grateful enough for France's support. The message behind his words, "We helped you, how dare you walk away?" But that's exactly the kind of thinking that's pushed African nations to turn the page. The United States hasn't been quiet either. Their tone has gotten sharper, dropping hints that countries stepping out of line might lose military or financial aid. But here's the thing, those warnings don't land the way they used to. People aren't scared anymore, they're fed up. In the busy streets of Ouagadougou, a young man put it simply, "Yes, we're struggling, but at least it's our struggle, not one handed to us by someone else." Ititokun. Captain Ibrahim Traoré isn't standing alone in this fight. His message, Africa for Africans, is being picked up across the region like a drumbeat that won't stop. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta made a bold move. He told the French military to pack up and go. His country then joined the Alliance of Sahel States, a new partnership with Burkina Faso, and Niger focused on doing things the African way. In Niger, General Abdourahmane Chiani didn't just talk, he took control of his country's uranium industry and showed the door to American troops stationed there. Even Côte d'Ivoire, once one of France's closest allies, decided it was time for a change. In early 2025, the government announced the French soldiers would be leaving, a response to years of frustration and rising public anger. Sure, the map of Africa still has dots where foreign troops are stationed, Gabon, Djibouti, and beyond. But that map is already starting to change. Traoré and others like him are lighting a match under the old systems. They're showing the world that Africa doesn't need to be babysat or bossed around, that its future should be written by its own people, not dictated by outsiders chasing profit. The story is shifting. For decades, Africa's gold, oil, uranium, and minerals were shipped away, leaving broken roads and empty pockets behind. But now, a new vision is taking shape. one where those same resources are used to build strong schools, working hospitals, and safe cities for Africans by Africans. If you found this video interesting, be sure to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe if you are not already.